trailer preview, huh? But he ain't coming back, so don't be waiting for that sequel. Your bones is getting broken like that ex that made you single. I reverse your hype entirely and see you in my review. I don't care about if this feed you, watch me play. So I spoke to the machine shop yesterday and they told me that the crank is good, so that means I can buy standard bearings and standard main bearings. I already have the thrust washers from ACL. I ordered the rod and main bearings. Once the parts come in, I'll do the build video, but for now it's just kind of waiting on parts and waiting on the machine shop. So we picked up the radiator from Hutch's Welding, and here it is. So what they did was they put an angle on the radiator itself, and then they put a riv nut and basically put a screw through the angle and the fan shroud that I made. So the only thing I need to do is pretty much trim part of the shroud over there because it's hitting that stud on the bottom. But these studs are for mounting down here on the chassis, so that way I just have it mounted on the bottom, and on the top I can probably mount it to the shroud or something along those lines. So the next thing I need to do for the radiator itself is I need to drill some holes on the shroud and figure out what hardware I'm going to use. We also got the aluminum piping in for the coolant. So pretty much what it's going to be is it's going to come off the block, off the head. It's going to route forward into the radiator. Obviously this is going to be trimmed. I'm going to trim the pipe to fit basically until it's running across the front of the radiator. Then it's going to go, and then it's going to do a 90 into the radiator itself. And then I'm just going to have to make a weld here in the middle for whatever set. So with these two aluminum pipes, I'll be able to make the 90 across the radiator and then a 90 back into the radiator. So that'll be that. Right now I'm just going to gather some tools. I'm going to go to the junkyard and I'm going to pull out a reservoir for windshield wiper fluid and figure out where I can put it. I mean, I pretty much have quite a bit of an area here that I can run just about whatever size I want. So I'm gonna figure out something that could probably route behind here, and I could fill it from the top and then have all the hoses and electrical wiring ran to it. So before we head over to the junkyard, I wanted to take some measurements and have an idea of how big of a tank I should actually look for. So we have maybe 5 inches deep, 6 by 6 by 4. And excuse all this. Oh wow. I just noticed how dented that is. This is from an impact that I had with my buddy. And over here too. Alright, so yeah, let's run over to the junkyard and see what we can find. So we found one. I'm gonna unmount it and see basically what it looks like outside of the car itself. I want to see how the pump is and everything. Okay, so we've managed to get the reservoir out. It's kind of big, but I feel this will be sufficient to last a whole event. So this is the water pump itself, and I believe that's just a low switch in case the fluid gets low. That's the thing that turns on your dash light that'll tell you that the fluid is low. So now that we found a tank that's I guess ideal, the only last thing I need is a connector for it. I guess someone went and took it from this car, so I just need to find another Toyota and see if I can find another connector. So luckily, not even 10 feet away, there was another one. It's already accessed, but the big difference on this one is the pump is gutted out. I'm guessing someone wanted the motor itself for whatever reason, but I got the connector. So now I'll just fill it up with water and see if I can find a battery somewhere in the junkyard. So I'm not really looking at spending more time here, so I got what I needed. I'm gonna go test it real quick, and if it works, then we're gonna go Home Depot, buy some hardware, go home, bounce up the fans. It's gonna be a good day. Let me just show you guys how I do that. Just put it on the battery. I already did it. It's working extremely well. spray's way the fuck over there. So I'm good with this. This will work. And it's more than enough pressure to feed that whole spray system. So here we go. So now we've got this tank here. And I believe what we're gonna do is, it's gonna go right in this little hole. Alright. I'm gonna cut this tab off. And I might have to trim into it. I don't think so. What I'll probably do is I'll steer this wheel all the way in. That way I know how much clearance I have. And then I'll cut this fender for basically the fill to be sticking through the fender. And I'll mount this on the chassis itself. I'll run the wiring to it and the hose, and I think we should be okay. Okay, so the fan shroud's painted. I drilled some holes to mount the fans. There's aluminum shavings all over the floor from drilling. God damn it. Right now what I'm gonna do, get the hardware. This is a locking, nylon locking. And I'm also gonna use some lock washers. So, get all the hardware out. I'll mount it up. So I've got the setup kind of temporarily rigged in place. It's just set on the car right now. What I'm going to do is supply power to the fans with this jumper box. Let's just see how one does right now, so that way we don't absolutely murder the jumper box right now. So let's see this one here. No, let's go with this one. Let's get ready. It's probably gonna fucking knock it over. Fucking ridiculous. Okay, so with that being said, water in there. Water. So here's the steering rack out of the car and disassembled. I took everything apart, masked it off, and painted I guess the body of it. And so now I have the shaft out. I was kind of looking at it, so need to clean it up. And then slap some new steels, put it together. There's a video on YouTube. I don't know the guy's name, but if you search up 240SX steering rack rebuild, he basically goes through the whole disassembly and assembly of it. So follow that video, and you'll have all the information you need. So for the steering rack, I bought the ISR steering rack lines, which basically connect to these ports and onto the top there, rather than running the hard lines, which typically get bent by the engine or transmission when it's going in and out. So yeah, gonna throw some new seals in and put it together. So steering rack is back together. I have the ISR steering lines. This replaces the hard lines. I centered the rack. Basically, I marked on this shaft. I turned as much as it would stop, and I started counting, started turning the other way, and then I found center. I marked the center there, and once I took a measurement from this end to this end, and this end to this end, they measure the same. It's about 2.5 inches, if I recall. So that's pretty much ready to go in. Right now, I'm running the wiring to the fans from a positive power terminal that I have down here, and the relay is going to be tripped by the Haltech ECU. And now, since I'm getting into wiring pretty much, I pulled out the center dash and I took apart some of the wiring that I have in there that I had stuffed away from the Haltech. It's basically extra wiring that I had. So I took out a wire that is basically an output wire. So with that output wire, I can control what it does through the Haltech software. So basically what happens is, if I'm driving down the road or if I'm on the track and the temperature reaches, let's say 190, on the Haltech ECU, I can set up that wire to, at 190 degrees, output at ground. So the water pump for my little reservoir will start to spray water at 190. So engine parts are coming in on Friday. Engine parts being the whole block, the head, and the crank. I ordered the bearings already. I got them from King's Performance, the ACL performance bearings, and the ACL thrust bearings. So yeah, stay tuned if you guys want to see the engine build video. It's always fun, I guess for me at least, when I watch someone build something or do any sort of technical work. It kind of, I guess, places me in their shoes, and it makes me feel like I'm doing it myself, I guess. I'll probably split it into different segments. So it's going to be like the crank, the rods, you know, everything, rotating assembly, and then putting the head on, putting the accessories, you know, checking the backlash, all that good stuff. I'll probably make in a separate video, so you guys can see segment by segment of this build. So yeah, stay tuned guys. Thank you for subscribing to me, and we're almost at 200 subscribers now. It's been a few months now that I've had this YouTube channel. I'm trying to, like I said, I'm trying to put in all the work that I can to build this channel. So thank you guys. Stay tuned.